hearty welcome to St John's 25th year in existence, and a very, very special welcome to a man who was Dromore Parish for about 14 years. I see him up there, very hale and hearty, is Father Paddy Gallagher.
There's a silver Jubilee cake, is there? There is, somewhere? Yes. And I have left him here, Mr. Colton anyhow, paid tribute to him, and I would like him to come along here and assist Mr. Colton and myself in case that for various reasons we're not able to cut the silver Jubilee cake. If Father Gallagher would come down and give us a hand, please. I hope you all have a very enjoyable night. We cannot cut it without a knife.
Round the table.
Here now. Just before we go on to the cutting of the cake, I've been asked here by the representative of the Past Pupils Committee if we could have those teachers present who were on the original staff when we first opened. I know it's dating us all, but if you could maybe come up and lend us at least your moral support for the cutting of this 25-year cake. And we definitely do need a knife. We cannot do the job without it. I've been joined by all those people whose time hasn't even dated us yet. Two of the early, and I stress early, past pupils, want to make sure of dating them well. The two past pupils who are going to be given the honour of trying to blow out these 4 candles all at the same time is Kathleen Daly and Enda McAleer. I hand you over to them.
In the foyer of St John's there is a plaque on which is inscribed the following: in grateful memory of Patrick McGinn, born in Dromore, 18th of September 1960, died at Warrington, England, 13th of December 1941. He bequeathed to the parish of Dromore the land used as site for this school and its playing fields. Eugene McGrath, born in Chummery, March the 3rd, 1869, died in New York, September the 9th, 1948. Though exiled from his homeland at the tender age of 7 years he ever remained solicitous for the welfare of his native parish, and at his death bequeathed his property towards the education of the children of Dromore. From his bequest, the cost of building and equipping this school was defrayed. In a very real sense, the story of St. John's must begin with these two good men. But for them, I doubt if we should be here today. This is not to imply that the people of Dromore lacked either the will or the means to build a secondary school. But at a critical time, the fact that site and money were available and earmarked was crucial. In the early 60s, it was envisaged that a secondary school should be built in Dromore to cater for the parishes of Dromore and Kilskerry, and another in Fintona to cater for the surrounding area. However, when the Ministry of Education studied the situation carefully, it came to the conclusion that two such schools would each be too small to be viable, and it was decided that one school should cater for all three parishes. By the time a firm decision was taken, the building of St. John's was underway. The edifice had begun to rise on the commanding site above the town. Benedict Kiley wrote of our school, "Because of the good hearts of two men who died far from home, hundreds of children go to school on a hilltop that balances the hilltop on which the ancient dead lie." The school opened on the 6th of September 1965, some years before there was any question of maintained status, and the parish priest was the manager. The late Canon Mackay, PP, died in 1964, and it was he who was responsible for the negotiations, planning and commencement of the building. And I have always understood that the school was named after him, John. The architect was Vincent Murnahan, and when he died, the work was continued by his nephew Alan. The main contractors were, of course, our own McAleer-Tague. Canon Mackay was succeeded as parish priest by the late Monsignor Flood, and it was he, as new manager, who oversaw the completion, equipping and staffing of the school. The school opened with an enrolment of approximately 180 and a permanent staff of 10. Myself, John McCusker as Vice Principal, Agnes Donnelly, Jermaine McSorley, Breed Duffy, James McCarthy, Peggy Kelly, Gabriel McGarrity, Michael McChrystal and Dennis McElroy, and the late Nellie McNulty worked as part-time music teacher. The late Joe McCourt was our caretaker. The school was solemnly blessed on the 10th of May 1966 by Bishop O'Callaghan. Present on that occasion, as well as the staff, were the late Monsignor Flood, of course, the late Father McGloin, the late Father Kirk, the late Father Byrne, Father Gallagher and Canon McNaboe. Mrs. Maguire of Trillick was present also. She was acting as temporary teacher at the time. I was proud and honoured to be appointed as the first principal of St. John's. It was a tremendous challenge, which I approached with great temerity. I was deeply conscious of the great potential we had, not only for the training and development of young people over a large area, but also for becoming a centre of learning and culture for the whole community. Working always as a team, we set out to make the school a special place, a happy place, where everyone was relevant. In those days, of course, before the school came into operation, about 25% of primary school children went to grammar schools at the age of 11 plus. The rest remained in the primary schools until they were 15. The perceived purpose of St. John's was to provide a largely non-academic education for those pupils who were not selected for grammar school education. the rejects. The idea that they could ever compete with grammar school pupils in public examinations was laughable. We all know now how that perception has changed. I retired in 1986, and since then have been a frequent visitor to the school. I am always made very, very welcome. It is now more modern, more streamlined, more structured, but still very much the warm and happy place which I remember, with the same excellent relationship among staff, pupils and ancillaries. May it long continue to grow in excellence.
Bishop O'Callaghan arrives to bless the new school in May 66. He is greeted by Principal Mr. Colton, Vice Principal Mr. McCusker and Miss Donnelly. Blessing the foyer of the school, Father McNaboe in the background. Bishop O'Callaghan moves around the outside of the school, blessing the grounds. Father Kirk, Father McLean, Father Gallagher and Father McNaboe in attendance. The first staff of St John's School with Principal Mr Colton, Miss Donnelly, Miss McSorley, Miss Kearney, Miss O'Duffy, Miss McGarrity, Miss Nellie McNulty, John McCusker, Mrs Maguire, Mr McElroy and Mr McChrystal. This staff of 11 opened the school in September 1965. The school team of the 1966-67 year that brought the Ulster Championship to St John's at a time when the school had only a total of 90 boys. It was a proud year and a very historic win. The first team to ever represent the school, the team of 1965. Many of that team were there the following year when the Ulster title was won. Two early netball teams, a junior team and a senior team from 1969. Some of those girls now have sons and daughters back at the school. Our first bus, bought second hand from the Western Board. You were liable to dislocate your shoulder trying to turn it. Mr McChrystal's demonstration car being pushed around the all-weather pitch in the early years of the school. Difficult to start, but once it started, you couldn't hold it. Pupils of those early years got a lot of fun out of Mr McChrystal's car. St John's over the years have had many good football teams. Here we see the 1973 Tyrone League winners, and in 1974 this team went on to win the Ulster Senior Championship for the second time. An Ulster 7-a-side, runners-up in 1976. The years of the mid-70s and thereabouts were great years for the school football teams. Here we see the 77 team that won the Ulster Junior Schools Cup. And in that same year, the senior team won the Tyrone League and the Tyrone Cup, beaten in the Ulster final. A team of the mid-70s again. And commemorating that great year in the 70s when the Ulster Junior title was won, runners-up in the Ulster Senior title. The evening of the 19th of March 1974, when the school was bombed, around dusk on the 19th of March, an explosion was heard, and we rushed up to the school, closed for the St. Patrick's Day break, due to open the next day, to find the whole classroom block in ruins. For a year or a year and a half, we spent the time mainly in mobile classrooms, as St. John's rose extended from the ashes. A view of the devastation that bomb caused. Caretaker, the late Joe McCourt, was in the school at the time, but thankfully escaped unhurt. Joe, before his death, spent many happy years in St. John's. A school staff of around the late 1970s. As you will see, long hair for men seemed to be quite fashionable, for those who had hair. A school group of 1978 with Mr. McCusker, who in an All-Ireland competition won the Book of Kells that is still on display in the school, presented at a very enjoyable function in Dublin by Seamus O'Kane, a native of Drumquin. And in 1979, a school group which won a local history first in the Western Board area. Joe Slevin and Martin Sludden make their own protest about the changing of townland names. Girls with their Christmas cakes, a yearly event. And the giving out of Christmas hampers around the area, another yearly event in St. John's. Here we have a presentation night of 1980. And a feature of St. John's has always been raising money for charity. And here a group of pupils present a cheque. The cheque is being presented here by Aileen Hughes to school principal Mr. Colton. Bishop Duffy visits the school in 1980 and along with Principal Mr. Colton meets all pupils of the school in the Assembly Hall. A later visit in 1987, Bishop Duffy with Chairman of our Board of Governors, Father Breen. Bishop Duffy speaking to a first-year class in the school in 1987. The retirement of Miss Jean McDermott, the late Monsignor Flood, presents Jean in 1985 on her retirement, and the retirement of Mr. Colton in 1986 when past pupil Kathleen Daly makes the presentation. An enjoyable event around about 85-86 was an inter-school link with Dromore and Strokestown, down at Strokestown in this photograph, and Strokestown back in St John's. Planting a tree at Dromore, Strokestown, County Roscommon. School principal greets Bishop Duffy on one of his visits to the school. Mr McCusker enjoyed greeting an old classmate of his from boarding school days. A group of second years who raised during the season of Lent £1,000. A school presentation night of 1986, prize winners with Mr Joe Martin, and in the same year prize winners academic and sport with school principal Mr McCusker. 88 academic and sports prize winners. And the following year, 1989, academic and sports prize winners with school principal Mr McCusker. A group that went with Mr McCusker to a canoeing holiday in the Ardèche, and the following year in 89, the group that went with Mr Quinn again to canoeing in the Ardèche. We canoed down the Ardèche River and lived to tell the tale. That was 88. School trips have always been a feature of the school and pupils enjoy them. Here, Mr Moohan with a group about to set sail for Arranmore Island. On the boat to Arranmore, trips have been made to France, to Ayr, to different parts of Ireland. The production of Joseph on the final night, Mrs O'Hagan and Mr McCusker on stage with some of the cast. It was a great 7 to 8 days of production. Our two stars, Philomena McNabb and John McGrath. This was a school and community production. A group of musicians in Joseph. Stephen Colton and Anita McCann, now Anita Breen, and Anita is now on our teaching staff. John McGrath, excelling as the Pharaoh. John was a past pupil. Happy faces from one of the choruses in Joseph. This is a picture just a couple of years ago of a school open night when primary 7 pupils and their parents. Mr Nugent shows parents around the craft room. Primary school pupils and their parents come to look over the school. Some of the primary school pupils here getting a foretaste of fun and games at St John's. Group of the lady teachers relaxing, taking it easy in the staff room. They do work hard all day, so now and again they take a period to take a rest. School bank in operation. In recent years, a computerised school bank linked to the Allied Irish Bank in Dromore. And here we have third year pupils in 1990 putting on a display of a conservation area. building a stone wall, dry stone wall, Mr. McElroy there helping. This conservation project won first prize in Northern Ireland at the end of 1990 from the Department of the Environment, and a beautiful trophy. The man behind the whole project, Joe Hughes, talks about it in the planning stage to school principal Mr. McCusker. Joe introduced the pupils to the skill of building a dry stone wall. I think it was an English general who once said that an army marches on its stomach, and if that is so, then we in St. John's are blessed, because we have a wonderful kitchen staff who serve wonderful meals to both staff and pupils. Mrs. Fittis, whom you saw there, has been with the school kitchen for the past 26 years. In recent years, the kitchen changed to a type of canteen service, and the pupils have a very wide and very varied choice of lunchtime food. Kitchen staff having their own midday meal, with the troops beginning to arrive outside. Everything in place. Mr. Luhan is coming through first here to show that the food is safe. In the past, the king always had someone to test out the food before he ate it himself, so staff do that job now for the pupils very willingly. This would be our first year pupils of the present school year, 1991, coming through for their midday lunch. Mrs. McElroy, our PE teacher, coming for lunch, and I'm sure will be healthy eating. People who may not want a full school lunch, in the corner of the dining hall, a counter serving snacks, fruit, crisps, drinks. Mrs. Hughes there looking after the interests of the pupils in that corner. From there at the main hatch, Mrs. McGinn and Mrs. Baxter. In the background, Mrs. Cunningham, serving the main course. To give you a view of the school as it stands now towards the end of our Silver Jubilee year, Paddy Hughes brought his video camera around some of the classrooms in December 1990. Here we have 50-year pupils working in one of the science labs. St. John's has in its science suite at the present time 3 fully equipped labs. Science teacher Mr. McLaren working with the pupils. We've now moved down to the craft rooms, and you see some of the boys working in the woodwork craft room. The plans at the moment are that our present heavy craft rooms will be redesigned to become a technology suite. We hope that, or rather this is going to happen probably in the summer of '91. I would like to think that craft, as it has been practiced in school for the past 25 years, will still have a part. First year pupils here working in the French classroom. Pupils here working in our new business studies room. This room was equipped 2 years ago, at a time, I might say, when some experts on Key Stage 4 of the national curriculum were telling us that business studies had become outdated. We never believed that and went ahead with the room. Now that it's obvious that flexibility is coming into Key Stage 4, the room will be very much a must for St John's. We have moved now into the music room, and music teacher Mrs O'Hagan is putting part of her choir through our rehearsal for our Silver Jubilee Mass of the 7th of February, when Bishop Duffy will be our guest. One of our first year classes here seen in one of the English classrooms. We have 3 English classrooms over in a corner of the building, beside the computer network room and beside the library, and plans are afoot at the moment to turn this section of the school into an English suite. A previous teacher in our English department, incidentally, was our retired senior mistress, Mrs Lily O'Hagan, still a frequent visitor to the school and a great friend of the school, as of course is our retired principal, Mr Colton, who comes back to us quite often as well. Mrs O'Hagan's position as senior mistress was taken by Miss Anne McGuinness, who is now one of the 2 vice principals of the school and head of the Maths department.
All at once she heard the door crack. Something slipped in and began to creep over the floor. The floor went creak, creak. At every step, this thing took towards her bed. The woman could almost feel it bending over her bed.
Very studious class indeed, and there at the back of the room You have their English teacher, Mrs. McReynolds.
You've got it.
This is largely under her.
Here we see pupils working in the library. We have, I think, a very well laid out library, but book-wise it has got a little bit out of date, and in this present school year we intend to spend quite a few £1,000s in modernising and updating our library stock. It's a quiet place for pupils to come and work during the day, and many pupils make very good use of it. Pupils now around the school have the benefit of seeing Joe Hughes' wonderful nature photography, all local photographs, many of them framed and hung around the school. The gymnasium here, and girls playing netball. This present school year, our second year and third year girls netball teams have done very well in inter-school competitions. Mrs. McElroy, PE teacher, is the netball coach. During the past school year, an American international basketball player from Texas visited the school and took 2 or 3 practice sessions with both boys and girls. This was very much enjoyed and appreciated. The gymnasium is the centre for our prize giving nights, and it is in this gymnasium that you see at the moment that we frequently have the celebration of Mass. As a Catholic school, we like to bring the celebration of Mass into all of our celebrations, and it will be the highlight of our Silver Jubilee year when Mass is celebrated on the 7th of February in St. Davos Church. School caretaker Paddy Corrigan, here seen shining up the brass plate in the foyer, which it tells us of how much the school owes to the McGrath and the McGinn beneficiaries. The latest addition to our school is the computer network room, and here you see a group of 5th year pupils making use of the computer network. Mr. McGraid, one of the 2 vice principals, is in charge of this room and is the computer studies teacher. What the Americans in the Gulf War would call the op room, the operations room of the school. Our school secretary, Charles McCusker, busy at work. Someone from the Department of Education on a visit here recently told me that Charlie was one of only 2 male school secretaries in Northern Ireland. Past pupil of the school. He has finally succeeded in getting Charlie to look up from his work. Not for St. John's, your ordinary school minibus. For us, in this present school year, a brand new Toyota Coaster, 25-seater, which you see now just pulling into the school. New 25-seater coach, which will be of great use to us for our educational outings for years to come. I won't mention the price, but it is an opportunity to thank everyone in the local community for the support that we got in November, December 1990 when we organised a draw to help pay off this new coach. And I mention here too the voluntary service that Jack McKinney often gives us as driver of our coach. In the rural science room, the boys at the window are, I assure you, not trying to escape. Rather, they are looking out at the 2 board tables outside. And as the poet Brendan Keneally once said at a talk I heard, birds with wings on them. In the greenhouse here attached to the rural science room, the vine along the roof of the greenhouse has been a feature for quite a number of years, and each autumn gives us a large crop of grapes. Feeding the birds. We're moving now down into an area of the school grounds that in 1990 we set aside for a wildlife conservation area. It was the work done in this area that won for the school the top award in Northern Ireland in the Environment in Safe Hands competition. We are very lucky to have such extensive and beautiful school grounds on an elevated site overlooking the village and overlooking the countryside all around. At all times of the year, the school grounds have a great beauty, even in winter, and particularly in the autumn and summer terms. It certainly lifts one's heart to see the beauty all around the school. School classroom block, we're viewing it now over the top of that lovely copper beech hedge right along the side. Earlier in this video you saw photographs of our dry stone wall in the wildlife area, and here you see that area, you see the real thing, the butterfly corners and dry stone. The dry stone wall in the centre, and we owe a great deal, in fact we owe everything to Joe Hughes for the instruction that he gave the pupils in the developing of this area, and particularly in the building of the dry stone wall.
When St John's School opened in September 1965, I came into the school as English teacher and vice principal. I worked in that capacity for some 20 years, and in 1986 I became principal of the school. Now, as we celebrate our Silver Jubilee and look back over the past 25 years, St John's has enrolled 361 pupils, 189 boys, 172 girls. And the indications are that the overall number will be higher from September 1991. In September 90, we had our highest intake of first-year pupils since the school opened. A total of 87 pupils, 40 boys and 47 girls. The teaching staff at present is 23 full-time and 2 part-time teachers. So, as we give thanks in our Silver Jubilee Mass of the 7th of February 1991 for the past 25 years, St John's, can I feel, look forward to the last decade of this century, look forward with confidence, and look on into the 21st century as the school that will be serving this community.